sale. Yeah. And I was like, I told the artist, I don't think I agree with this part.
But 1 second again, I'm trying to understand. What is the conflict?
The conflict.
Yeah.
The conflict is an institution.
Acting as a gallery.
Yes, acting as a gallery. If you are an institution, you are an institution. Because the idea of an institution is that you are somehow investing into the artist's work, the artist's ideas, and in art, the ideas and the forms are the ultimate at the end of the day. That is what we're striving for, because we want to push artists to be the best of themselves through the work that they make. And it's also not just the work that they're making, but the legacy of the work. There is a memory to the work that you're making at every point in your life as an artist. And if you're doing a residency, for instance, you travel from another country to come here to do a residency, you have to keep the work. It's important. It's not for you. I think that's one of the problems that I have, most people have with me or have with people. That I always say that whatever you produce with your hands, it doesn't mean it belongs to you, you know, because the inspiration that you get is from the labor of many people that have translated into things, into chaos, into crisis, and then that inspires you to be able to make your work. So once you're done with the work, for instance, if you're making these beautiful paintings, and then it's inspired by, let's say, the culture and then, let's say, conditions of society. Without those somehow brewing over years and decades, you couldn't make this painting. So
that specific painting,
so that is something that is already like a debt in your head. So once you make the painting, a series of them, then you have to then now think, okay, how many of these paintings am I going to keep, and how many of them will I sell in order to keep making more work in the future? Whereas in the case of many artists, they want to sell as much as they sell, then it makes them feel important or successful. But for me, no. If you can find a way of making sure that you sell just a little, and that little can keep you going, so that you can, because you're building a history, not for yourself, but for
the humanity.
And it doesn't seem to be such an important thing within the time that we live in, because it's so difficult.
One of the things when you talk about that, I think of one of the conflicts I also have is usually when artists who are selling goods do not want to exhibit in Uganda because they think Uganda does not have a space that equates to them. Yes, I've literally talked to artists who say, I don't think there's a space that can contain not in terms of concepts or ideas, but in terms of the grand part of me. So then, it's a lot of passion. And so you end up that people are really creating, and the works are never seen by the communities in which it's inspired. And we don't see this as a problem, which is really
controversial. Because if you are taking input,
so it's not seen, it's not theorized, it's not remembered. The communities, we see it in art fairs somewhere.
It's like you might as well not live here anymore.
But we need to start thinking, why is it important that I'm situated here? If before something goes out there, that the people that we live with understand.
I think the problem with the art world is that we're so much obsessed with the glory of art. We're not obsessed with the problems and the chaos within art itself, the making of it. And for me, that has been one of the most important things to me. I want us all, because we're living in a world of suffering. But how do we experience the suffering together? Through the work that we make. So if you have to convert your practice from, let's say, making a painting to, let's say, making a sculpture, or making a sculpture into making a column, and a column becomes a building, and a building becomes like an educational tool that changes the way maybe children perceive art or culture or history. That in the long term, that even comes back to affect the painting again, So sometimes people might say, oh, but then the artist is anti-painting because he was making paintings and now he's not. I'm like, no. It's not that you abandon painting. It's that painting has to be reinforced through a new means. We can't use the same traditions of painting to make painting important. So those artists, if they understood the power, that if they were, for instance, really digging deep into the context and then somehow making work that would somehow revitalize the art scene and create new contexts and new forms, it would even create room for their own work in a way. It's just, honestly, just stupid when people think and act that way. Say, oh, my work is so important. I'm like, no, your work is not important. You know, your work is only important when it's connected to an entire generation. Once it's not,
then it's forgotten.
It's forgotten. It's gone. Yeah. So if kids come and they see these works and all that, at least there is a memory. There is something in their head that becomes part of the codex of, let's say, what they understand as art. Yeah. And what the artist represents and does and all that.
Yeah.
So where are you working right now?
I mean, I live in Ghana. Yeah.
But where are you working on?
What am I working on?
Yeah.
Oh, and, I'm mostly teaching these days, but recently I was building this railway line in the north of Ghana, at my studio. So it really ate up a lot of my time. Yeah, so I had to stop to come. Yeah, but it's I thought it was important. Yeah, because it's when the British built the railway in Ghana in the late 1800s, they didn't build it to the north of Ghana. They only built it in the south. That's why Ghana was called the Gold Coast, because there was a lot of gold in the south. Of course, there's gold in the north. By the time it was not discovered, the lithium, uranium, like they only discovered it in the last couple of years. And yeah, they didn't build it there. So when they were trying to extract the bauxite, the gold, manganese, and things from the south in the mines, and also there was a lot of cola and cocoa, because Ghana was the largest producer of cocoa in the 20th century. So they needed labor, and the labor came from the north, where my grandparents were. So the British had to impose a tax on the villages that any man above the age of, let's say, 16 or whatever, who could work, had to work in the mines or in the farms and others. So there was a huge migration. They took a lot of young people from there. So when you go to the south, you find that there are a lot of northerners there, but not as a result that they migrated themselves. Yeah. But the memory, the commodities that were extracted, everything, the money never got to the north. So that's why when you come to Tamale, those places are very poor as compared to Accra. So when I became an artist, I thought, okay, why not build? Because restitution is not only, and repatriation is not only when you take things that were taken physically, but sometimes you can take the memory of things. So for instance, you can even take capital as restitution to a place. So when Western museums say that we have to restitute, it's not just the objects they have to restitute, they also have to restitute money, knowledge, forms, things. There's a lot of things you have to restitute. So the trains were one of those things that I thought was important to the memory of children living there. Because how do you restitute or restore memories which never existed? Because when I took the trains there, no one who had never left the place had ever seen the train before. So, and a lot of the kids were so excited because for the first time, they felt like there was a future, like there was a new future arriving. But interestingly enough, it was the past that was coming. Yeah. So it's like more than a century and 3 decades later, we are somehow now catching up with the past as a future. Yeah, but then what does it really mean philosophically? So those questions are things that as artists, and people would say things like, oh, but these things are old, why didn't you buy new trains? And that's like, no. You know, and people also come and say, oh, but the trains have all these scars and things on them, so why not paint them? And I'm saying, no, let's leave them with all the scars and everything on them. So I like painting on that level, because there's a lot of graffiti on parts of the trains, which there are a lot of, like, some of them were left in the bush, abandoned in the bush for a long time. So there were some weed guys that were smoking in it, they were making their graffiti and other things. And very beautiful, you know. But I've seen a lot of artists who buy objects, like parts of planes, and then they take it to their studio, and then they make paintings on it. I was like, you missed the point, you know. It's almost as if you don't respect the thing, you know, the object.
And the object of its own history.
Yes, it's like you don't respect it in a way. So basically that's it. But I really love it when I encounter artists making works, paintings, sculptures, their own interpretations of cultural forms, things like that. Yeah.